Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever location you are watching this video. And in this video, I'm covering one of the most asked important question and one of the most asked questions as well, right, around SQL Server interviews, how to delete duplicate records from SQL Server. Now, this question has a lot of flavors, right? Some interviewers can ask that, okay, delete SQL Server, duplicate records, it has an ID. Someone will say, okay, delete duplicate records which does not have an ID. Someone can say, can you use an CTE to delete duplicate records, and so on, right? So many flavors out there. Let me know if this question was asked to you during SQL Server interviews or during .NET interviews. Please put down below what was the flavor, how did you answer, right? And what kind of cross questions were asked to you. And before I move ahead, right, I want to just announce that if you go and if you share the below SQL Server interview question video, so below we have an SQL Server interview question video on our channel. If you go and if you share that on your LinkedIn, only on your LinkedIn, right? And if you send us a mail at questpond@questpond.com, and also you can tag me on LinkedIn, right? We will send you this ebook. There is an ebook out here which is of 70 questions, right? You can get this full ebook out there. So go ahead, share that video on your LinkedIn and you should get that ebook. Now, as a teacher, as an instructor, right, I also want motivations. I want to see that how many people are actually seeing my video, right? So basically here it is. If you guys go and give a 1000 like on this video, I will record the next most asked SQL Server interview question. If you go down in the comments below, I have recorded one SQL Server interview question of 1 hour, right? Second video I have recorded of the end salary and so on, right? So I've recorded some videos out there, but at the end of the day, I want some motivation. I want to know that really people are seeing these videos, right? So if you go ahead and if you all guys go and give a 1000 like out here, I will record the next most asked SQL Server interview question video and I will put down in the comments below. Okay, so enough of all this marketing what I've done, right? Shameless marketing, right? Okay, enough of all that, right? Let us go ahead and start with the content. Now, what I think is that before we start answering this question, right, I think the most important part here is the approach, right? So let us get first started with the approach to answer this question. When you get these kind of questions, right, it is very important that rather than focusing on the solution, so rather than focusing on the final SQL, I would suggest to focus on the approach. And I'll tell you why. The first thing is that if you know the approach, right, if you get any kind of cross questions, for example, this question is about go and delete the duplicate record. But let us say that the interviewer tweaks the question and says that delete records, which are not duplicate, right? So when you get a cross question out there, because you know the approach, right, you can go and try to come up with a solution, right? And the second important thing which I feel out here is that many interviewers don't look at the final solution. Like at least when I interview, right, I don't want to get the exact SQL, but I want to see that how the candidate is approaching it. If the candidate approach is right, that's what I look for. And the third important point is, right, at the end of the day, I don't want this to be just to be an interview question kind of a thing, right? I want you to also gain knowledge, right? So what we'll do is, to get the answer to this question, let us first try to understand what are the steps and what is the approach, right? And the approach is actually a 3-step process. So you can see on my screen out there, I have a simple table here called as TBL names out here. So if I execute out here, you can see that this has duplicate records out here. So you can see 1 and 2 is Shiv, which is duplicate, and then 5, 6, 7 is Vishna, which is again duplicate, right? So we want to go ahead and delete the duplicates from the table, right? Now, as we said, we have to understand the approach, right? So approach, will be a 3-step process. So you can see here, I put down the steps out there. So first one is make sure that you have unique IDs. This is very important, right? So if you look at our table at this moment, our table does have a unique ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you don't have a unique ID, then you need to generate one, right? So I'm asking one question out here. Let us say that if the table does not have unique ID, right, in SQL Server, what is the function you will use to generate the unique ID, right? So first thing, yes, but this has unique ID. You can see this is an ID column, so it has unique ID. We don't have to worry, right? So the first step is done, right? Step 2, get the unique record with the IDs. So get the unique record with the IDs means now we have to go ahead and get the names, right? So we have to get the names, but the names should be unique, right? So for unique, I will go ahead and say group by name out here. And with this, what will happen is it will exclude the duplicates. Why? Because you are grouping on the name, and it will look at duplicates and it will group the duplicates into single section, right? So there it is. But if you look at the second step, I said that get the unique records with the IDs. I've said get the unique record with the IDs, right? Now what will happen out here is, because you are using a group by clause, and if I try to use an ID out here, it's not going to work, right? Because in a group by clause, what happens is you have to have the column in the group by, or you have to have the aggregate, right? So what we have to do now out here is, right? So here's what we're going to do. We will use the max or the mean, right? So for example, you can see Vishnu out here, 5, 6, 7. So either I will select the first Vishnu, which is the mean of ID, or I will select the last one, which is the max of, right? Example, you can see Shiv and Shiv here. So either the mean or the max, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and say, okay, let us put the group by, right? And this will be, we'll take the max, right? And let's execute this. Now there it is, right? 4, 2, 3, 7. It has selected the max of the Shiv, which was 1 and 2. It selected 2. Vishnu was 5, 6, 7. It selected 7, right? So this is the second step out here. Get the unique records with the ID. Remember, approach is very important. It's very important. If you know the approach, if the interviewer, because when you go into a discussion, right, with an approach, what happens is you can handle the cross questions, right, and so on, right? Right. And the last step is now very easy. Now that we have the unique IDs, what we have to do is that other than these records, which are selected from step 2, other than these records, look at my face. Cameraman, please focus on my face. Other than these records, which are selected from the step 2, delete all the other records, right? So delete from TBL names, right, where ID, right, not in, where the ID is not present in this thing, right? Now remember that whenever you're using the where clause, you cannot have 2 columns out here. So I'll just go and delete this. You just need the max, right? And I'll just do a check syntax. The command looks good, right? And I'm going to go and execute this. So just before I execute it, make sure you have unique IDs in your table, which is done. Get unique records with the IDs. So we use the group by and we use the max. And the final one, delete records except for the records not present in step 2. Remember, this is all this is the ebook. This diagram where you're seeing now at this moment, this is coming from this ebook, right? And I would like to go ahead and give you this ebook, right, if you want it. But what you have to do is that down below in the comment section, we have the SQL Server interview question course. Go ahead and share that SQL Server interview question course on my LinkedIn ID, which I'm flashing out here, right? If you share it out there, I will give you this ebook through the email. The email also I'm flashing. So what you have to do is that when you go and you share this video on your LinkedIn ID out there, send us an email. We'll do once a check, and we will right away give you this ebook, right? So if you look at this ebook, it has awesome questions out here, 50, 60, 70 questions out here, right? And you can have a look at it, right? So fine. So yeah, coming back again, let us go back. Let me go back to the ebook. Okay. So yeah, so the 3-step approach, right? Now with that, let us go ahead and check this is working or not, right? So I'm going to go and do an execute. 3 rows have been deleted. So if I go and do a select out here, you will see that only the unique records are there. The duplicate records have been deleted. So Shiv had a duplicate record 1, Shiv, that has been deleted. Vishnu had 2 duplicate records, 5 and 6. Those have been deleted, right? So remember the approach. I know that I'm repeating it, right? Make sure you have unique IDs, get unique records with IDs, and whatever record you are getting from step 2, other than that, delete all the other records. Now, there is a tweak to this question. There is another flavor of this question which is very famous, which is asked that what if your table does not have a unique ID? So in the previous question, we had a unique ID, and now we don't have a unique ID, right? Now this question, what I will do is that I will give you a hint, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I will answer 50% of the question. I want everyone out there to start thinking and answer the next 50%. See, the steps remain the same, the 3 steps, right, what we discussed, right? But because now we don't have a unique ID out here, how do we approach this, right? So you can see out here we don't have a unique ID, right? And we want to go ahead and duplicate and delete the duplicate data. I'm sorry. So we want to delete Vishna from here and keep one Vishna. We want to delete Shiv from here and keep one Shiv, right? So how do we approach it? Again, the same thing, guys, right? The process remains same, you know, you should have a unique ID. Now that you don't have a unique ID, now things have changed. So you can see here now what I've done is, again, this ebook, you know, which I'm referring here, if you go ahead and if you share the below SQL Server interview questions and tag me on LinkedIn, this is my LinkedIn ID, you will be getting this ebook, right? But very quickly here, you can see that here. So if you have a unique ID, then yes, you get the unique records, you delete it, right? This step follows. But if you don't have a unique ID, what do you do, right? Now to generate unique ID, we can use window functions in SQL, right? In SQL Server, we have something called as window functions. Now, we have one window function which is termed as row underscore number. So if we go ahead and if we apply row underscore number out here, we can generate a unique running ID. So over here, we are going to go and use the row underscore number. So the way we write the code out here is row underscore number. So this is the function, right? And on which we want to generate the running number, we'll say over, right? Over the name, right? And now when you are saying again name, you have to give an order, right? So I'll say yes, order by name, right? And we'll say that this will generate an ID, right? So if I execute this, you can see now it has generated an ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have given an order here, right? By default, the order is ascending, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? It's ascending out there, right? So remember, row underscore number is a window function. It's a window function. Now remember, guys, one more thing, you know, if you're going for the interviews, right, I would suggest to go through the window functions interview questions also, right? In window functions, there are some questions, you know, which are asked, you know, for example, one is, what are window functions in SQL, right? I've answered this question in the ebook. Also, in my SQL Server interview question course, I have given more details about it. I would suggest that if you're seriously preparing for SQL Server interview questions, you should subscribe to my course, right? But if you don't subscribe, you can have this ebook, right? Read from here. But what happens in the video is that I really go in depth, right? I talk about a lot of scenarios which will help you to gain confidence, right? But still, if you want to go ahead and read from the ebook, why not? So, but there are some questions. What are window function in SQL, right? I think this you should know. What is a partition clause, right? And one of the questions which comes is that, is window function same like group by, rank versus dense rank, right? These are one of the most favorite questions, right? So there are some questions around window functions out there, right? So this is the window function I'm using, row number over what? Over name. And what is the order? Order is ascending, right? A, B, C, D and till V. And it has generated a unique ID. Now you'll say, sir, this is nice. So we are done, isn't it? Now let us go ahead and use group by and do a delete. So you must be now thinking is that, okay, so we are done with this. Now the other things is easy, right? So basically you cannot apply group by on a window function, right? Means example, if I go here and if I try to do here, you can apply group by and as well as aggregate, right? So if I say here group by name, right? And if I try to say here, give me the max of this. If I try this, if I do a check syntax, it works, right? But if I execute this, window function cannot be used in the context of another window function or an aggregate. So we are using an aggregate here. So an aggregate like mean, max and count does not work on window functions, right? So I have given half the answer. It's not that I have not given the complete answer, right? I do have given the half the answer, right? So in other words, I have generated the IDs, right? Now I will give you the direction. Now I'm not going to go and give the complete answer over here, right? Okay, I want to see that how many people really participate in answering this, right? So we have generated the unique IDs by using row number, right? But now what we need is, and we can't use group by, we can't use aggregate, right? So we are stuck out there, right? But I'll give you a hint. You have generated the unique ID. Now what you do is that you apply partition. You apply Windows partition out here. Means we have a window function and there is a concept here called as partition. Apply that partition and then you say delete the record count greater than 1. Are you guys understanding it? Cameraman, please focus on my face out here. Are we getting everyone? So basically what I'm trying to say is that, so you have generated unique IDs by using row underscore number. Now because we can't use group by, we can't use those aggregate functions, right? Use the partition. Okay, let me do like this. Let me also go ahead and try to show you how it looks with partition, right? So I'll say here partition by name, order by name, right? Now look at the output, right? So we'll understand it. Look at that output. Shiv has 1, 2, Vishna has 1, 2, 3, right? With it is creating sub windows and every sub window has a has its own sequence of numbers, right? Now what you can do is that, and that's what the last step is, delete the record counts which are greater than 1. Easy, isn't it? You get this, and now what you can do is that you can say, okay, delete the record counts which are greater than 1. For example, Aditya is unique, so it is 1. Simran is unique, it is 1. But look at Shiv. Shiv is not unique, right? So you will say go and delete the record 2. Greater than, wherever the greater than count is greater than 1, delete it. You will also delete Vishna 2 and 3, and that will lead to cleaning up the duplicate records, right? Now what I want is, with this, right, I want you to go ahead and write the SQL in the below YouTube comment. Let us see that how many people can write that, right? So I'm just giving you the approach. Already I have given the answer, like the answer is already out there, right? But let us see that how many people can answer it. And what I want is that if you're putting that SQL down below, please give some explanation. Don't just put the SQL out there. I want some explanation out there, right? Now guys, one of the most important thing in any interview is presentation. When you're presenting something, how is your presentation, right? Now this delete query which I've told you to write, right? I want that whenever you write that query, you present it nicely, right? I always believe, that interview is, when you're giving an interview, it is 60-70% technical, but remember 30% it is about how you present, how you orchestrate, right? I know many developers out there who are awesomely good, right? They are superbly good in their performance. But when it comes around talking about their resume, when it comes around presenting out their answers, their technical vocabulary, it goes for a toss. And that's a big issue, right? So what I want is that whenever you're presenting this answer, I just don't want the right answer. I want it to be present. You should present it nicely. You should present it in a clean way, right? I will give an example. For example, I love chai. I love drinking tea, right? And in Mumbai, we have this cutting chai. If you look at the cutting chai, right, the chai is the same, right? The chai is the same. But I have seen that when you drink a tea from a hotel which is presenting it in a bad way or in not a good manner, right? You drink the tea, right? Definitely many people like to drink the tapri chai, right? But at the end of the day, you always feel that something is missing. But when the same tea is presented in a very right way to you, right? You always feel good about it, isn't it? So I want that when you're presenting this answer, right, you present it in such a way that the interviewer can understand it in an easy manner. And I'll give you a hint. The answer when you're presenting me, right, try to use CTE. Try to use CTE. Remember, CTE again is one of the most asked question in SQL Server. I'm flashing on the screen, some of the questions which are asked around CTE, and I would suggest you to practice that, right? In my SQL Server interview questions, I've covered that. So when you're presenting this answer, 2 things keep in mind. The answer should be right. And second, the answer should be presented in an easy and a presentable way, and which I feel that CTE will do justice in that. So that brings us to the end of this video. It was almost a 15+ minutes of video, right? And I have covered the question. I have also given you different approaches, how to approach the problem, right? In the same way, there is one more question which is asked during SQL Server interviews, and that is, find the second highest salary, find the third highest salary, and so on. So that question I have answered down below in my comment section. You can see that video. Again, it is one of the most asked question, right? And remember that if you give me 1,000 likes, right? I have 200K subscribers. Can't I get 1,000 likes, right? So if you give me 1,000 likes, I will record the next SQL Server interview question video, right? Also, down below, I have recorded 1 hour of SQL Server interview question video. If you go through that video, I promise you that if you go through that video, right, you are ready for almost 30% to 40% of your SQL Server interviews, right? That is a promise, right? And the most important thing at the last, if you go and if you share that SQL Server interview question video on your LinkedIn, you get this ebook, right? So I hope that this video was useful, and I hope that you know now how to answer, how to approach when this question comes up, right, during SQL Server interviews. Happy learning, happy job hunting, and be billable. Thank you.